There are many terms which might be used to characterize the conflict now occurring in Vietnam. For the general public, the best known probably is guerrilla warfare. However we refer to it, there can be no question that armed insurgency on a large scale is taking place aimed at the destruction of a people's national independence. It is the policy of the United States government to advise and assist the people of the Republic of Vietnam in their struggle to defeat the communist insurgency which strives to eradicate their freedom. The American soldiers you will see in this film are part of our assistance effort. As members of the U.S. Army's Special Forces, they are among the most highly trained military personnel the world has known. Each of them has been trained in a variety of skills which in more conventional organizations would be distributed among 2 or more individuals. These soldiers possess the capability of going to remote, primitive regions of the world to live with the people, eat their food or share their lack of it, learn their language, their customs and taboos, and win their confidence and respect. The future of such areas as Southeast Asia ultimately may be determined by events taking place in remote jungle villages which appear on no maps, by acts of violence occurring only under the cover of darkness, by wars which can be won or lost before the world is aware that a war has even begun.
The war in Vietnam is finally over. Since the hostilities began, the world has changed. Special forces groups face the enemy of government budget cuts as they are restructured or eliminated entirely. 8th SFGA, for instance, is inactivated on June 30th, 1972, and elements are configured to make the 3rd Battalion 7th SFGA. Also that year, the SF Training Group finds a new life, now as the Institute for Military Assistance Student Battalion. This low-profile group focused on Latin America with European and African missions, as well as domestic ones such as Spartan, special proficiency at rugged training and nation building. Warfare is no longer limited to war itself, but exists in acts of terrorism. The 1970s brings a deepened awareness of worldwide terrorist groups and a realization that conventional military tactics are not enough, not strategically nor diplomatically. The United States Special Forces continue their fight by adhering to the unbreakable guidelines, the 5 truths. Truth 1. Humans are more important than hardware. People, not equipment, make the critical difference. The right people, highly trained and working as a team, will accomplish the mission with the equipment available. On the other hand, the best equipment in the world cannot compensate for a lack of the right people. Truth 2. Quality is better than quantity. A small number of people, carefully selected, well-trained, and well-led, are preferable to larger numbers of troops, some of whom may not be up to the task. Truth 3. Special operations forces cannot be mass-produced. It takes years to train operational units to the level of proficiency needed to accomplish difficult and specialized SOF missions. Intense training, both in SOF schools and units, is required to integrate competent individuals into fully capable units. This process cannot be hastened without degrading ultimate capability. Truth 4. Competent special operations forces cannot be created after emergencies occur. Creation of competent, fully mission-capable units takes time. Employment of fully capable special operations capability on short notice requires trained and constantly available SOF units in peacetime. Truth 5. Most special operations require non-SOF assistance. The operational effectiveness of our deployed forces cannot be, and never has been achieved, without being enabled by our joint service partners. The support of Air Force, Army, Marine and Navy engineers, technicians, intelligence analysts, and the numerous other professions that contribute to SOF have substantially increased our capabilities and effectiveness throughout the world. Terrorist acts aren't only limited to other countries, but also occur on American soil. An average of 50 to 60 bombs a year are exploded in the United States by the mid-1970s, while one airliner a month on average is hijacked. In 1970, terrorists from Palestine staged a mass hijacking of 5 commercial airliners, a precursor to the tragedy of 9/11. There are 6 modes of terrorism employed by the terrorist: political assassinations, kidnappings, airline hijacking, bombings, armed assaults, and hostage situations. Amongst the greatest and most significant of these acts is when 11 Israeli hostages are taken at the 1972 Munich Olympics and executed by their captors. That same year, 26 passengers are killed at an Israeli airport by the Japanese Red Army. It has become enough of a scourge for the United States to create the Cabinet Committee to Combat Terrorism. International cooperation is paramount in these instances and will require a level of diplomacy and sensitivity unprecedented in world politics. But from a strategic perspective, regularly trained American military will not be enough to counter the unpredictable terrorists. In 1974, the Department of the Army creates Special Ranger Units A and B, 75th Infantry, after a 30-year absence of a specialized ranger force. The charter, created by Army Chief of Staff General Crichton Abrams. A World War II veteran and tank commander, Abrams served under General Patton and was present at both the Battle of the Bulge and in Bastogne. He served in the Korean War and became commander of the Military Assistance Command in Vietnam in 1968. Unlike his predecessor, General Westmoreland, Abrams' strategy in Vietnam was to win the hearts and minds of the South Vietnamese. He becomes Chief of Staff in 1972. Shortly after forming the Rangers, Abrams dies of complications related to lung cancer. One of the greatest anti-terrorist special forces groups will be Delta Force. Charlie Beckwith is more than just a Green Beret and Vietnam veteran. Standing at 6'3", this former football player is soon known for his maverick attitude. Beckwith's Special Forces experience dates back to 1958, when he first volunteered and found a role with the 7th Special Forces Group Airborne at Fort Bragg. 2 years in Laos followed in 1960 as part of Operation Hotfoot with the White Star teams. In 1962, Sergeant Charlie becomes an exchange officer with the British 22nd Special Air Service and is put in command of 3-Troop A Squadron as part of the Malayan emergency. As such, they fought the guerrillas of the Communist Malayan National Liberation Army against the Commonwealth. His experience with the SAS inspired him to lobby for an American equivalent that, like their British counterparts, would take direct action against terrorists and insurgents. Beckwith's vision is for small, autonomous teams of specialists who can handle the unpredictability that comes with fighting terrorism. Beckwith serves in Vietnam throughout the war, receiving a critical bullet wound to the abdomen in 1966. He recovers in time to return 2 years later to command the 2nd Battalion, 327th Infantry Airborne. 1973 and 74 see him as commander in Thailand until he is promoted to colonel and returns to Fort Bragg, where he becomes commandant of the U.S. Army Special Warfare School. And still, Colonel Beckwith insists on creating a crack anti-terrorism unit. He finally gets his wish. In November 1977, Beckwith forms a counter-terrorist unit specializing in hostage rescues and specialized reconnaissance. This ground force, of which he is commander, will feature only the best operatives. They will undergo a rigorous and brutal selection process that leads to a 6-month training course. Members of this crack unit, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, will exist outside the usual U.S. Special Forces command structure. It will become better known as Delta Force. Beckwith gives the Pentagon a 2-year timeline to create this crack force. In the interim, Colonel Bob Black Gloves Mountell of the 5th Special Forces Group created the Green Beret counter-terrorist unit, Blue Light, to fill the gap. Recruits for Delta Force are culled from a rigorous selection process. It starts with a more standard series of tests, such as push-ups and a 2-mile run, and culminates with a 40-mile non-stop march with a 40-pound rucksack. The psychological testing is designed to exhaust each candidate, and that is all before the 6 months of grueling and intensive training. Delta Force is publicly described by the military as the U.S. Army's Special Operations Unit, organized for the conduct of missions requiring rapid response with surgical application of a wide variety of unique special operations skills. And candidates must be male, 21 years of age, and between the ranks of E4 and E8. Beckwith and his first cadre of Delta Force operatives will face overwhelming odds on one of their first missions. Iran has been in a state of unrest for almost 2 years. U.S.-backed leader Shah Reza Pahlavi's regime begins facing riots in the street from Iranian protesters. After a year of violence and protests, Pahlavi flees the country on January 16, 1979. It sets the stage for the return of the revolution's leader, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a Shiite cleric who has been exiled to France. He returns with plans of turning Iran into a religious dictatorship, or a vilayet-i-faqih. America has long intervened in Iranian politics, mostly through secretive means. The distrust of the United States fuels the Ayatollah's followers, primarily Iranian college students. It is on November 4th that 500 students defy all international law and agreements to storm the U.S. Embassy. 52 embassy and staff members find themselves held hostage by the sheer numbers of students. The captors demand, return the deposed Shah for trial while also ending any American involvement in Iran, and they will set the hostages free. With the Ayatollah refusing to restore order with Iran's police, the country is in a state of chaos. President Jimmy Carter, facing overwhelming odds, calls on the Pentagon to intervene. Operation Eagle Claw will test Delta Force and have a profound, lasting effect on America's special forces. The plan: 8 Navy RH-53D Sea Stallion helicopters will depart the aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz, from the Arabian Sea. Their staging area, Desert 1, is in central Iran. There, they will convene with 3 EC-130E transport planes carrying the Delta Force operatives, and 3 more MC-130Es bearing 6,000 gallons of jet fuel for the copters to make the trek. The second staging area, Desert 2, is 260 miles from Desert 1 and 52 miles south of Tehran. The helicopters will land there and wait. On the night of the 25th, Delta Force operatives will ride into Tehran with 6 different trucks driven by CIA operatives from Iran. They will take the embassy, free the hostages, and be picked up by helicopter in a nearby soccer field. Supporting them will be U.S. troops, affecting power supplies to Tehran, and AC-130 gunships for cover fire in Tehran. Army Rangers will secure a nearby airport to board C-141 transports and escape to safety. The greatest enemy on a battlefield isn't always the other side. Many times, it can be the elements and pure chance. Such will be the downfall of Operation Eagle Claw. Dragon 1, the first helicopter, lands the first night per a prior installed infrared lighting system. The pilot, donning night vision goggles, is forced to pass over the runway 4 times to check for obstructions. The Dragon 1 is heavily damaged in the process. The combat control team, with commanders Carney and Beckwith, unload. This team consists of 120 Delta Force operatives and 12 Rangers, along with 15 Iranian and American agents fluent in Persian. More Delta operatives are dropped off by 2 more MC-130 helicopters. Then, a chance encounter with fuel smugglers in a tanker truck forces the Army Ranger roadblock team to destroy it with a shoulder-fired rocket. The resulting conflagration lights up the airfield for miles around. A dust storm called a haboob, where sand particles form a thick consistency in the air, strikes. One helicopter crash lands, while another is able to return back to the USS Nimitz. A third helicopter falls prey to mechanical issues with the hydraulic system. Without a plan B, partially due to Beckwith's refusal to utilize Canadian intelligence, the mission is scrubbed. While leaving Desert 1, one of the remaining helicopters crashes into a C-130. 8 are killed in the explosion. The rest of the helicopters are abandoned in haste as the operatives evacuate by transport, leaving them to be added to the Iranian Navy. At 1 a.m. on April 25th, the White House admitted failure. The Iranians at the embassy scatter the hostages across the country, keeping American forces from staging another concentrated rescue attempt. President Carter is unsuccessful in securing the hostages' release through diplomatic means. After 444 days, the Iranians release 52 captives on January 20, 1981, immediately after the end of Carter's term. Khomeini proclaims an act of God caused the sandstorm. The United States will not forget the hostage situation or Khomeini's ruthlessness. An investigation into the failure of Operation Eagle urges the creation of the Joint Special Operations Command, an organization to coordinate operations and training between special mission units that are considered Tier 1. This includes the Navy Special Warfare Development Group, Delta Force, and the Air Force's 24th Special Tactics Squadron. Other special forces are created for specific missions in the shadow of the failed Eagle Claw. The Navy's SEAL Team 6 is created, while the Night Stalkers, the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, Airborne, are created for aviation missions. Richard Marcinko is tapped by the Navy as one of 2 representatives on the Terrorist Action Team to create a full-time counter-terrorist unit for the Navy. He names this one SEAL unit SEAL Team 6, with the goal of confusing Soviet intelligence, who will assume there are several of these teams in action. Officially formed in October 1980, SEAL Team 6 recruits undergo an intensive 6-month training program. These specialists are the best from both SEAL and underwater demolition teams. They are required to have combat experience, SEAL skills, and aptitude at languages for having to deal with local populations, and the ability to fade away into civilian populations during operations. With seemingly endless resources, the team's ammunition requirements apparently exceeds that of the entire Marine Corps. If it is attached to a body of water, be it an oil rig or a coastal embassy, it is a mission for SEAL Team 6. October 1981 sees the birth of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Battalion, or as they are better known, the Night Stalkers. This Special Operations Force has members that are triple threats for Army, Airborne, and the Night Stalkers. With a headquarters, 4 battalions, and training, the Night Stalkers boast the greatest combat pilots to ever fly a helicopter or jet. The Night Stalkers are formed to stage a second rescue attempt of the hostages in Tehran in early 1981. Operation Honey Badger is canceled when the Iranians release the hostages immediately after President Carter's term ends. But the Night Raiders are not off the table. They are officially formed on October 16th and kept as a contingency. They will see action very soon. During his first term, President Ronald Reagan faces the threat of global terrorism. Korean Airlines Flight 007 is shot down by the Soviet Union on September 1, 1983. Among the 269 on board is over 60 Americans. On October 23rd, members of the multinational force in Lebanon stage a suicide run with 2 trucks driven into troop barracks. 58 French paratroopers and 241 American Marines are killed in this jihad. Barely more than a week before, there is trouble on the island of Grenada.
Grenada and a half dozen other Caribbean islands here were, until recently, British colonies. They're now independent states and members of the British Commonwealth. While they respect each other's independence, they also feel a kinship with each other and think of themselves as one people. In 1979, trouble came to Grenada. Maurice Bishop, a protege of Fidel Castro, staged a military coup and overthrew the government which had been elected under the Constitution left to the people by the British. He sought the help of Cuba in building an airport, which he claimed was for tourist trade, but which looked suspiciously suitable for military aircraft, including Soviet-built long-range bombers. The 6 sovereign countries and 1 remaining colony are joined together in what they call the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. The 6 became increasingly alarmed as Bishop built an army greater than all of theirs combined.
When Bishop is ousted by his communist deputy prime minister, Bernard Couard, President Ronald Reagan is alarmed.
On October 12th, a small group in his militia seized him and put him under arrest. They were, if anything, more radical and more devoted to Castro's Cuba than he had been. Several days later, a crowd of citizens appeared before Bishop's home, freed him, and escorted him toward the headquarters of the military council. They were fired upon. A number, including some children, were killed and Bishop was seized. There were then about 1,000 of our citizens on Grenada, 800 of them students in St. George's University Medical School. Concerned that they'd be harmed or held as hostages, I ordered a flotilla of ships, then on its way to Lebanon with Marines, part of our regular rotation program, to circle south on a course that would put them somewhere in the vicinity of Grenada in case there should be a need to evacuate our people. Last weekend, I was awakened in the early morning hours and told that 6 members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, joined by Jamaica and Barbados, had sent an urgent request that we join them in a military operation to restore order and democracy to Grenada. They were proposing this action under the terms of a treaty, a mutual assistance pact that existed among them. These small, peaceful nations needed our help. 3 of them don't have armies at all, and the others have very limited forces. The legitimacy of their request, plus my own concern for our citizens, dictated my decision. I believe our government has a responsibility to go to the aid of its citizens if their right to life and liberty is threatened. The nightmare of our hostages in Iran must never be repeated. We knew we had little time and that complete secrecy was vital to ensure both the safety of the young men who would undertake this mission and the Americans they were about to rescue. The Joint Chiefs worked around the clock to come up with a plan. They had little intelligence information about conditions on the island. We had to assume that several hundred Cubans working on the airport could be military reserves. Well, as it turned out, the number was much larger, and they were a military force.
Dubbed Operation Urgent Fury, U.S. Special Forces will play a key role in the operation. With poor intelligence, the most recent map available to National Security Council's Special Situation Group, U.S. Army Rangers of the 75th Ranger Regiment Joint Task Force 123, led by Army Major General Richard Schultz, will parachute in from MC-130s to capture the unfinished Salines runway. Marines will seize Pearl's airport after coming on shore via Navy Amphibious Squadron 4, led by Captain Carl Erie. It is 0500 hours on October 25, 1983, when Operation Urgent Fury finally launches, 3 hours past the original launch time. SEAL Team 4 and SEAL Team 6 will recon the Point Salines airfield and surrounding beaches of the Pearl Airport, capture the radio station to cut off any calls for reinforcement, and perhaps most importantly, rescue deposed British Governor General Sir Paul Scoon from his house arrest. SEAL Team 6 sends in 8 operatives by Black Hawk helicopter to seize the radio station at Beausejour. They secure the station, but after fighting emerging Grenadian forces, are forced to withdraw to the beach to escape by sea. Point Salines is a disaster. 4 members of Team 6 are lost at sea, a combination of waterborne parachuting into darkness and an excess of gear some to the weight of 100 pounds. As the surviving SEALs move forward in their boats, they encounter a Grenadian patrol boat and are forced to turn back. Another attempt the next day finds the SEALs encountering another patrol boat and then left drifting at sea from a faulty engine. SEAL Team 6 is successful in saving the former governor after rappelling down from a helicopter. Their cunning and training allow them to hold off the governor's home until reinforcements are finally able to get through. 2 Marine Cobra gunships are shot down by Grenadian forces. The SEALs are also pinned in by fire from 2 AC-130 gunships. The Marines are able to arrive the next day and reinforce the brave contingent of SEALs. Learning the runway at Point Salines is blocked with vehicles, the Rangers are forced to parachute in from a mere 500 feet. Knowing they will be exposed to Grenadian fire, they bravely jump out at 0534 hours. A company, 175th, led by Captain John Abizade, hotwires a bulldozer to clear the runway. In less than 7 hours, the runway is secured, and American troops are brought in per a C-141 Starlifter. An attempt to free political prisoners from the Richmond Hill prison brings 5 MH-60A Black Hawk helicopters bearing Delta Force operatives, but later than planned. Losing the element of surprise, the operation is frustratingly scrubbed in light of ground fire. The invasion comes fast and fierce, with 5,000 American troops descending upon the island. American forces find enough weapons to arm 10,000 men, from small arms to anti-aircraft guns and shoulder-mounted rocket launchers, to howitzers and armored vehicles. At the end, the United States procure the country and help instill an interim government. The cost is 59 Cubans killed, with 25 wounded. The remainder are sent back to Havana. 45 Grenadians are killed, with 337 wounded. 19 U.S. troops are killed, with 119 wounded. Special forces were at the forefront, paving the way for the rest to come in. With Grenada secured, Cuba is denied another conduit for smuggling arms to boost communism. And the medical students are saved, able to fly home from the runway taken by American forces. Grenada is invaded within 2 months, with an interim government paving the way for a newly elected prime minister.
Grenada, we were told, was a friendly island paradise for tourism. Well, it wasn't. It was a Soviet-Cuban colony being readied as a major military bastion to export terror and undermine democracy. We got there just in time. I can't say enough in praise of our military, Army Rangers and paratroopers, Navy, Marine, and Air Force personnel, those who planned a brilliant campaign and those who carried it out.
But there are still concerns with the efficiency and operation of the various Special Forces teams. Both Eagle Claw and Urgent Fury make it abundantly clear a spirit of joint cooperation between Special Forces is required. After a reassessment of the Special Operations Command structure, the government establishes the U.S. Special Operations Command, signed into existence by President Reagan on April 16, 1987. Replacing the United States Readiness Command, U.S. SOCOM is activated with General James Lindsay, former head of U.S. REDCOM, as its first commander-in-chief. U.S. SOCOM is mere months old when a joint operation with the Night Stalkers, SEALs, and Special Boat teams puts the new organization to the test. Operation Earnest Will is implemented to provide safe passage for neutral oil tankers during the Iran-Iraq War. Special forces are put in conflict with Iranian terrorists. Transforming 2 oil servicing barges into mobile sea bases, Special forces are able to stop Iranian mining and boat attacks. When the USS Samuel B. Roberts is damaged by an Iranian mine, American forces retaliate through Operation Praying Mantis, an attack on 2 Iranian frigates and 2 oil platforms. That, and the unfortunate bombing by a U.S. ship of Iran Air Flight 655, leads Iran to end hostilities against Iraq. the United States had maintained a relationship with Panamanian General Manuel Noriega as an intelligence asset. It comes to the attention of the U.S. government that while pulling money in from the U.S. as a paid informant, he was double dealing with Panamanian drug dealers. The U.S. is concerned with the security of the Panama Canal as both American property and as an important strategic location. When Noriega refuses to relinquish his role as the dictator of Panama, despite losing to overwhelming numbers in the national elections, an allegedly unprovoked attack on 4 unarmed U.S. military personnel by Noriega's Panamanian Defense Forces on December 16, 1989, leaves 1 dead, while 2 American witnesses are assaulted by PDF officers. President George H.W. Bush orders an invasion of Panama the next day.
Noriega declared his military dictatorship to be in a state of war with the United States and publicly threatened the lives of Americans in Panama. The very next day, forces under his command shot and killed an unarmed American serviceman, wounded another, arrested and brutally beat a 3rd American serviceman, and then brutally interrogated his wife, threatening her with sexual abuse. That was enough. General Noriega's reckless threats and attacks upon Americans in Panama created an imminent danger to the 35,000 American citizens in Panama. As president, I have no higher obligation than to safeguard the lives of American citizens. And that is why I directed our armed forces to protect the lives of American citizens in Panama and to bring General Noriega to justice in the United States. I contacted the bipartisan leadership of Congress last night and informed them of this decision. And after taking this action, I also talked with leaders in Latin America, the Caribbean, and those of other U.S. allies. At this moment, U.S. forces, including forces deployed from the United States last night, are engaged in action in Panama. The United States intends to withdraw the forces newly deployed to Panama as quickly as possible. Our forces have conducted themselves courageously and selflessly, and as Commander-in-Chief, I salute every one of them and thank them on behalf of our country.
All 4 branches of the military take part in Operation Just Cause, with ground forces that also boast a Joint Special Operations Task Force. The invasion begins at 0100 hours on December 20th, 1989, with a force of 27,684 troopers descending upon Panama. They strike fast and with precision. Airfields and Panamanian Defense Forces barracks, even Fort Amador, in close proximity to the canal, are taken. But what of the fallen dictator? It is up to SEAL Team 4 to capture Noriega. They dub it Operation Nifty Package. First, a team of 48 SEALs take out Noriega's private jet, a ticket out of Panama, at the Punta Paitilla airport in Panama City. 4 SEALs are killed in the gunfight, until the jet is destroyed by an AT-4 rocket. Next is his gunboat on the canal. Because of its heavy armament, it will require stealth. 4 SEAL divers dodge grenades while testing the limits of their scuba gear to attach a pair of bombs to the hull. With the boat destroyed, Noriega is trapped. Meanwhile, Delta Force is given the mission of freeing an American civilian and purported CIA operative, Kurt Muse. Muse had been imprisoned in Panama's notorious prison, Carcel Modelo, for transmitting anti-Noriega messages on radio. 23 Delta operators, accompanied by Night Stalkers, land on the prison's roof and work their way down to Muse's cell. Muse's guard is killed before he himself can kill the prisoner. The American is given body armor and escorted back to the roof by Delta operators, where they are extracted by helicopter. Then, things go awry. The little bird bearing Muse crashes. 4 Delta Force operators are wounded, while Muse and 4 others remain uninjured. They hole up in a nearby building, where the 5th Infantry Division arrives in an armored personnel carrier for extraction. Noriega seeks refuge in the Apostolic Nunciature Church, itself the default embassy. The Monsignor Laboa allows the fallen dictator in, secretly hoping to convince his surrender to the United States forces. As Noriega sits in the unair-conditioned room with nothing more than a Bible to read, American forces are in a bind. To take the church would violate international law and cause controversy. The government turns to the Vatican, who, in accordance with church customs, refuses to turn him over. All that is left is psychological warfare. Rock and roll music is blared at deafening levels from the perimeter for 3 days. On January 3rd, after urging by Monsignor Laboa, Noriega surrenders to American forces. Trouble has been brewing in the Middle East for some time, even beyond the Iran-Iraq War. On July 23, 1990, Iraqi forces, 30,000 strong, converge on the border with Kuwait. According to Iraq's dictator Saddam Hussein, Kuwait's recent negotiations with Iran and Syria were costing Iraq. To Hussein, America is the enemy. The United States, claiming neutrality, may be forced to respond to Iraqi aggression towards Kuwait. On August 2nd, Iraq bombs Kuwait's capital city. The invasion is swift, and Iraq is soon in control of their rival country, with Hussein making his cousin, Ali Hassan al-Majid, the country's new governor. President Bush and the world are mortified at Iraq's actions. The United Nations recognizes that with Kuwait under Iraqi control, Saudi Arabia and its valuable oil fields could give Hussein a grasp on the majority of the world's resources. President Bush announces Operation Desert Shield, designed to protect Saudi Arabia. It soon evolves into an air campaign dubbed Operation Desert Storm. The ground attack is christened Operation Desert Saber. The coalition is formed between America and 13 other countries, a united front designed to keep Hussein from gaining a strategic advantage over the world. Starting that month through December, the Marine Expeditionary Force, or MEF, is at the forefront of military activities. Intelligence gathering and reconnaissance missions accompany the hunt for Scud missile sites. These Soviet-designed missiles, often launched from the back of trucks, are skillfully hidden by Iraqi forces. Since they are mobile, they are not dependent upon a launch site. The Scud will become amongst Iraq's most powerful weapons. The MEF venture towards enemy lines to map out positions and rain artillery fire on Iraqi armor, and engage in battle sooner than the main ground forces will. 2 other divisions of MEF on the sea hold 50,000 Iraqi soldiers in check on the shoreline. The Night Stalkers, piloting Chinook helicopters, are vital in covertly dropping special forces teams behind Iraqi lines, and also rescuing downed coalition pilots. Delta Force works in conjunction with the MEF and other special forces, including the British SAS, in the Scud hunt. They also provide additional protection for U.S. General Norman Schwarzkopf in Saudi Arabia. The Delta operatives send a blow to Hussein's plans on the final day of the ground war. As Iraqi forces are violently flushed out of Kuwait by the coalition, Delta Force discovered 26 Scud missiles in Iraq. They are aimed at Israel. An attack on Israel would lure them into the conflict and upset the Arab coalition. The Delta operatives are an entire 3,000 yards from the launch site, armed only with .50 caliber snap rifles. Their unerring accuracy punctures the missile's fuel tanks and destroy the Iraqi soldiers manning the Scuds. According to General Schwarzkopf in a letter following, "You guys kept Israel out of the war." By February 28th, almost the entire Iraqi army inhabiting Kuwait is encircled by coalition forces, their power greatly diminished. On March 6, 1991, President Bush announces victory against Iraq.
From the moment Operation Desert Storm commenced on January 16th, Until the time the guns fell silent at midnight 1 week ago, this nation has watched its sons and daughters with pride, watched over them with prayer. As Commander-in-Chief, I can report to you our armed forces fought with honor and valor. And as President, I can report to the nation, aggression is defeated, the war is over.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.